What's up, guys, and welcome to the Week 11 edition of Player Pool. I've got some great plays this week, including a cheap, ugly stack, which should help us get in high-value studs, and I'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching the Week 11 edition of Player Pool. This is a show where we break down the NFL slate for Week 11, the main slate, and we're going to build a player pool of DraftKings players so we can build a bunch of DraftKings lineups, and I'll do that on the show as well. Make sure to hit the like button. I'm looking for 30 likes so we can put out a shorter video later on. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking to get to 1,200 subscribers by the end of Week 11. I'm already over need about 40 left to get there. I'm about 1160 right now, so I need about 40 left to get there. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. You want to subscribe anyways to sign up for the alerts to know when these videos come out. Usually don't have a set schedule for when I post these things, so you'll want the alerts to know when they come out, especially the shorts, which are usually posted around an hour before lock. Last week, I was not able to get the shorts out, but I was able to, once I hit the 30 likes, post in the comment section of the game script shows or the main shows, what my favorite picks were. But this week, I should be able to get those shorts up again. So just a heads up on that. So let's dig into this player pool here. It's going to be a pretty good slate this week. I felt really good about it the first time running through it. And I've been running hot on the main slate, but last week, kind of ran into the first, just disaster. Last week was a mess as far as a lot of chalk missed, as well as a lot of guys who were in great matchups and had lower ownership. It was just a weird week overall last week, but you get those in fantasy sports. We're all used to it. We move on to the next week, and this week should be much better. At least it sets up that way. And I like how some of these matchups are shaping up for some of these teams and the prices. Some of the stuff I like is a little bit chalky this week, but that gives us an opportunity to put in some of the more expensive guys that have less ownership. We're not looking to get crazy with our lineups. We just want to get different in a few spots, and we should have that opportunity to do that this week. So I'm going to start off with Green Bay versus Chicago. This is a game I don't have a whole lot of interest in. Chicago has been a really good defense recently, but their offense sucks. And on the Green Bay side, they're facing a difficult defense, and I'm not really interested in either side of this game. But if I was going to play someone, I think the guy that stands out the most to me is Cole Kmet, just because the Green Bay Packers are giving up 13.3 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, which makes Cole Kmet interesting. And he hasn't done anything in a few weeks, but he can always pop off with one of these 25-point weeks. And I think this is a week that sets up, for him to be able to do something like that. They have a new offensive coordinator. They fired the offensive coordinator. I'm pretty sure that the head coach can't be far behind. That coach has been a disaster with Justin Fields and now Caleb Williams. And I would not be surprised to see that head coach fired as soon as the season ends. But Cole Kmet is who I'm interested in this game primarily. I didn't really see anyone that I liked on the Green Bay side. We're looking at a $7,000 Jordan Love. That's too expensive for this matchup. Caleb Williams on the other end, he just not doing it for me. I'm not really feeling anything in this matchup. They both have difficult matchups. Green Bay's giving up only 14.8 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, and Chicago's only giving up 11.3. So kind of and plus it's a divisional game, so I don't know what to really expect in this one, but I'm not really high on it. Let's see. If you are high on these games or any of these players, by the way, leave a comment in the comment section. You never know, when the person who's doing this show, in this case me, is missing something with these matchups. So it's always good to post your comments and maybe some stats to back up some of your favorite picks and why you like them and why like I might have missed them. Jacksonville versus Detroit. Looking at another one of these games where Detroit's going to be a heavy favorite. Looking at a 13.5-point favorite for Detroit against this Jacksonville team. Jacksonville's been struggling, and then on top of it, now they have lost Trevor Lawrence, at least for this week, and they lost him last week as well. But that will lead to an interesting situation for the running backs. We're looking at David Montgomery primarily for me. I just think that this game is setting up as more of a David Montgomery type of game. Huge home favorites. Montgomery really hasn't done anything in a few weeks. He scored touchdowns, but he hasn't really had one of those 20-point games that we're used to seeing out of him. I would not be surprised if David Montgomery has a decent game in this one. And I don't mind Jahmyr Gibbs either. Like either of those guys can have a decent game in this one. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown might get some ownership this week, but I would not go there with Amon-Ra St. Brown. The only thing that the Jacksonville Jaguars have done well this year is defend the slot. So, Amon-Ra runs, obviously, most of his routes from the slot. So he's got the most difficult matchup in a game that's setting up with Detroit as 13.5 favorites. It favors a more run-heavy game script, even though Jared Goff has a great matchup. Jacksonville is giving up 22 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, and they're giving up 23 DraftKings points a game to wide receiver ones. Jameson Williams might be interesting in this one, in that situation. Also, Sam Laporta has a good matchup with, Jacksonville giving up 14.4 DraftKings points, but the running backs are the ones who have the best matchup, 27.1 DraftKings points. And on top of that, the game script just in general is favoring these running backs. If we look over at Jahmyr Gibbs, he's a little bit more expensive. He's 7,300. He hasn't had too many great weeks this season either. He's had that 35-point game versus Minnesota and a 23-point game against Tennessee. But otherwise, this Detroit team has been like so efficient that they're just not scoring a lot of fantasy points because there's not a lot of opportunity and like it's just kind of a weird season for them because Jared Goff has been playing super efficient and it's been it's just been affecting their overall opportunities. So not really expecting many fantasy points necessarily from the passing game in this one, but if I did like somebody, it would probably be Jameson Williams in this one. He came back last week and he did pretty good. He had a decent amount of targets for his first week back from a PED suspension. He had 5 targets. He only had 3 receptions for 53 yards, but the opportunity was there. I had him as a captain in that game against Houston, and it didn't pan out, but he had the opportunities to make it pan out. It just didn't work out for it. But Jameson Williams, I don't mind him at 5,800 in this matchup. I think there's better places to go though. I probably won't have any Jameson Williams in my lineups. Not really anyone besides the running backs who I would be interested in this game. The Raiders versus the Dolphins. This is a game that's going to be, interesting on the Dolphins side with Tua. Like the Raiders are giving up 18.3 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. Tua should be low owned. Tyreek should be low owned. They haven't been playing well. Tyreek's at 7,400 though. His price has gone up a bit, but 7,400, it's still relatively cheap given his history. He has a wrist injury that they're talking about having surgery in the off season now. Putting off surgery is what the word is on it. but you can see it in his targets: 9 targets, 2 targets, 9 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets. So since Tua's been back, he had a 5-target game and a 4-target game. I can't remember if Tua was back against Arizona or not, but he really has not been putting up numbers, and I think a big part of that is because of his wrist. He hasn't crossed 20 DraftKings points since week 1. So really 7,400 is unjustified for his price, but that also makes him a contrarian pick. If you think that he can have a decent game against the Raiders, who are typically pretty good against wide receiver ones, then go for it. But I think the matchups that I like the most in this is going to be Devon Achane, and I think Jonnu Smith. Achane is getting 25 DraftKings points a game from the Raiders, and Smith is getting 15.2 DraftKings points a game from the Raiders for the tight end position. So I think this is a game that maybe Achane controls, and would be the optimal guy that I would want from this game. And we know that Miami is an explosive, or has the potential to be an explosive offense, and Achane is basically the wide receiver 2 in addition to the main running back. So there will be plenty of opportunity for him against a bad defense to put up some points this week. So I definitely like that opportunity there. Let's see. Take a look at Jonnu Smith real quick, too. Jonnu Smith has had some decent targets recently. He came within inches of scoring a touchdown, which would have been huge for me in that game where they played the Rams in a showdown. I had him as a captain option. He ended up with 7.5 DraftKings points. That would have boosted him with a 13 as a cheap DraftKings showdown option, which would have helped us out with our lineups. But Jonnu Smith having a decent season here. His first year with Miami: 6 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets, and then he had that 4-target game last week. But he's been pretty involved in this offense, even with Tua in the lineup. And he's cheap. He's only 3,800. So I like him as an option to keep in our player pool. I want to go over to Underdog and give you some of my pick'em picks for this week. I put out a shorter video a little while ago that you guys can check out if I can't find it here. Let's see. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to share over this Underdog. Make sure to sign up for an Underdog account using the promo code SEEK. That's going to get you a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. That's free money. You deposit $2,000, you're going to get a $1,000 deposit match from Underdog, and that's going to set you up for playoff best ball. And playoff best ball, we're a few weeks away from it. Playoff best ball is, in my opinion, the best ball, because you've got an idea of how the teams are playing throughout the season. You can pick your favorites on who you think can advance that the field is overlooking, like throughout the playoffs. A lot of times I'll draft several weeks before the playoffs so that I can draft, like guys from teams that I think will make the playoffs, but are, maybe a couple games out of it and have an easy schedule coming up. And it's a good gamble to draft those teams in later rounds and get yourself a nice stack of a team that has some stud players. Like let's say Cincinnati, for instance. If Cincinnati is on the outside looking in as we get a couple weeks close to the playoffs starting, and all those Cincy players are going towards the end of the draft, but they have an easy schedule that gives them a maybe a like a 60% chance of making it into the playoffs, then we can load up on those Cincy players in the later rounds. And if they advance to the playoffs, we got like a juggernaut offense in the playoff best ball. So that's the type of strategies I like to use in that. But make sure to make that deposit so you can get $1,000 deposit bonus. They're going to match you up to 50, or they're going to match you 50% up to $1,000. But I also do pick'ems, and I've been doing these pick'ems each week. I do short video, and I also kind of go over my picks on this show. This week, And this will give you an indication of some guys that I like later on when I'm going through this player pool. Elijah Moore, I like him to go higher than 3.5 receptions. Elijah Moore has done really well this season with Jameis Winston as the quarterback. He's hit 9 targets in both games started by Winston, and his higher lower is only 3.5 receptions. So Elijah Moore in a really good spot to get 3.5 receptions in the game against who are they playing? Take a look real quick. Cleveland's playing New Orleans, who just lost, their top corners. The top corners are gone. Marshawn Lattimore, I can't remember where he went. He just went to a different team. He got traded, and another one of their corners either got traded or he's hurt. But they're really short on their secondary. And Elijah Moore and the Cleveland passing game is going to be set up nicely. I got Cedric Tillman in there too. I got him higher than 5.5 receptions. Tillman has been doing really well with Winston as well, and both these guys have been doing well since they got rid of Amari Cooper. As far as Tillman goes, he's had 6+ receptions in every game with Winston, and New Orleans, as I mentioned, got rid of their top cornerback. George Pickens, I like him going higher than 70.5 receiving yards. I actually like him going even higher than that. I like him going up to 90, which you can change in Underdog if you want to, bet him up to, go higher on him up to around like 90 receiving yards. I think what would be my limit on him. I don't mind going higher on him than like 90.5 or whatever it is when you hit that drop down. Amari Cooper, I like him going higher than 3.5 receptions. Amari Cooper is going to be facing off against Kansas City's weakest corner. Let me take a look real quick. I'll show you guys something here with the injury report for Kansas City. Show you what their depth chart is looking like right now. If you look at and we'll get into this in the game breakdown too. If you look at their secondary, Jalen Watson is on IR, and that has forced Najee Johnson to be their right cornerback. That's who Amari Cooper will be primarily facing off against. He faces off against them about 56% of the time. And Najee is a guy that we were targeting a couple weeks ago on Showdown as well, just because the thinness of this right cornerback position. Jalen Watson was a huge loss for Kansas City, and that's going to set up Amari Cooper. And that game is actually setting up for a few good spots, which I'll get into once we hit that game. But let's just finish off with this Underdog. Anthony Richardson, I like him going higher than 0.5 interceptions. Now, the beauty of this is, these combination of 5 players will get you 22 times your money if they hit. And on top of that, if you're a new depositor, they'll also give you a bonus pick. So it's Aaron Rodgers. You can pick him higher than 0.5 total yards to add to this and make it even higher. So make sure to make the deposit under Underdog. Use the promo code SEEK, and they're going to match you first depositors up to $1,000 on a 50% deposit match. So let's get into this remainder of this player pool here. Bowers against Miami, not a great matchup. Miami's been playing pretty well. Just in general, their defense has been playing pretty well. They've only been allowing 12 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. Where they've been vulnerable is the running back position, but the running backs are not very good on the Raiders side. Madison might be interesting at 5,500, but 5,500 is a pretty, actually a pretty steep price. I wouldn't want him for more than, at 5,000, I don't think. And he really hasn't done too much this year at all. He's had a couple passable weeks, but none of these weeks for $5,500 are going to be like tournament winning weeks. A-Chain and really and Jonnu are the guys I'm interested in. If you want opportunity, Jacoby Myers should get opportunity. He got 11 targets last week. He's going to get in this range, in the 7 to 11 range weekly, most likely, over 9 targets. So that's going to make Jacoby Myers interesting at 5,600. The matchup, as far as the matchup goes, Miami's been tough against, middling, actually, I should say, against these wideouts. They've been giving up 19.5 DraftKings points a game to wideouts and 11.1 to slot receivers. They've been tough against tight ends, too, only giving up 9.7 DraftKings points a game. I would say if I was going for like some sort of stack on this game and I needed a run back on the Vegas side, I'd probably go with Jacoby Myers over Brock Bowers in this one. Or, if you want to get super cute with it, you could get Madison or Samir White in there, but I don't really like the running backs in this one, except for A-Chain, obviously, on the Miami side. All right, let's go into this next game. Looking at the Rams versus the Patriots. Take a look at the numbers over here. As far as the Rams go, the Patriots have been pretty good against the quarterback. They're only giving up 14.5 DraftKings points a game. They've been weak against the running back position, giving up 24.6, and they've been weak against wideouts, giving up 21 DraftKings points. Where they've been good is against the slot. So if I was going between Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, I might lean more towards Puka Nacua in this one, and Kyren Williams if I wanted to go 2 out of those 3 guys. So Kyren Williams and Puka Nacua have the best matchups. The Patriots have been giving up 24 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, and Kyren's been quiet recently. He's still up there in price at 7,900. There's probably better, more expensive guys that you can go with, but Kyren Williams is definitely in play in this matchup, and I think Puka Nacua is probably my favorite guy in play on the Rams side for the wide receiver situation. As far as the Patriots, the best matchup is going to be Hunter Henry, where the Rams are giving up 13 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. This is why I targeted Jonnu against them last week. Hunter Henry has not done a whole lot. He had a lot of targets, but just has not been really putting up that many DraftKings points. But all it takes is one touchdown to turn the 17-point game into a, like a 24-point game, or this 12-point game into a, like an 18-point game. So, I mean, we got plenty of upside with Hunter Henry at 3,900 in a good matchup. A guy that's going to be popular this week is going to be Kayshon Boutte. He's 3,500. He's been getting a lot of targets. He's got 666 the past 3 weeks. Look at what he's done with it, though. He hasn't done anything with it. I know he's a trendy play this week, but I probably won't have a lot of him. I think the deal is the long passes that the Rams are giving up, and Kayshon Boutte's they're wide out. But really, I don't like any of these Patriots in this matchup. The Rams have been playing pretty good defense recently. They are playing at home in New England, but I don't really like any of these Patriots guys. If I was doing something, I'd probably play around with like a Drake May if he's cheap enough. Yeah, he's 5,600. Like Drake May to Hunter Henry, and then run it back with like Puka Nacua or Kyren Williams. I think that would make a lot of sense, and that would basically hit the best matchups there. And you're pivoting off of Kayshon Boutte with Hunter Henry, who is only $400 more than him, but he has a much longer track record of success, not only in the NFL but also with Drake May so far. Yeah, Kayshon Boutte has a good DVOA matchup. He's cheap enough so that I don't hate it, but like at 20% ownership, I'm not really a Boutte fan this week. Take a look at his again. gives you an idea there. So yeah, he hasn't had a breakout game yet, but I targeted him in Showdown a couple weeks ago. With the same mentality that he was primed to have some sort of a breakout, and he disappointed in that one. I think it might have been against the Jets a couple weeks ago. Can't remember who it was against, but I don't know if he did too much in that game, but I had the same mentality that people are having this week with him. Looks like he's getting opportunity. Looks like he is primed to break out, but it's the Patriots, and the likelihood of him breaking out as a 20% owned guy, I would take the opposite bet there. Cleveland versus New Orleans. This is a game that I like. I love Jameis Winston in this one. Jameis Winston is, resurrected himself a little bit a couple weeks ago with a 27-point DraftKings point game. He slowed down last week against a tough Chargers defense with 13 DraftKings points. I think that, Jameis Winston, you saw the good with the 3 touchdowns versus Baltimore. You saw the ugly with the 3 interceptions versus the Chargers. But the guy behind him, Dorian, whatever his name is, like I just do not see like a reason to bench Jameis for that guy. I think that Jameis has the most upside out of the quarterbacks, obviously, on this team, and he faces off against a New Orleans defense that, as I mentioned in the Underdog segment, is going to be missing Marshawn Lattimore. Let's take a look over here at their depth chart. See the other guy that they're missing. All right. So they've just been decimated with injuries. Look at all these injuries to New Orleans. Like, this is just the offense. We'll get into their offense in a second, but I'll give you a rundown. Jamal Williams is out. Kendre Miller's on IR. Bub Means is on IR. Rashid Shaheed is on IR. Chris Olave is on IR. Left tackle Justin Herron is on IR. Left guard Lucas Patrick is out. He also plays center. Eric McCoy is questionable. Eric McCoy going out early in the season is what set New Orleans up to just have a disastrous season. They were playing really well with him at the center, and as soon as he went out, you saw them just turn around. Right tackle Ryan Ramczyk is out. Now, if we go into the defense here, Tano Kapazigan is out. Cameron Peterson is on IR. Let's see. The main ones that I'm concerned about or want to point out is just the guys that got traded. We lost Marshawn Lattimore. As far as IR, Paulson Adebo is on IR. Rejjon Wright on IR. Just very thin for this team. They're missing so many players, and a lot of these players are good players. Kool-Aid McKinstry, he's the rookie. He was a first-round pick. He's questionable. I'm not really sure what his injury status is exactly, but it gives you an idea of how banged up they are in general. So, New Orleans, this is going to be a good defense to attack, and Jameis Winston is the perfect guy to attack it. At $5,500 salary, we can build a stack with him pretty cheap. His weapons, guys like Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman has, look at these targets with Jameis Winston, 12, 9, 11 since Amari Cooper's gone. 18 DraftKings points, 28 DraftKings points, 19 DraftKings points. He's still at 5,300. I love Cedric Tillman this week. He's in a matchup against a team, that's let's check out who his primary matchup is going to be in this game, just to give you an idea. All right, so Tillman lines up primarily in the left side of the field, which means he's going to be primarily up against. Can't even tell. Like it's like their secondary is so decimated right now, or just just eliminated. all their good players that you can't really tell who he's going to be up against the most. If it's Taylor, then it's an excellent matchup for Tillman. Let's see. If it's against Jean Charles, it's a good matchup for Tillman. Otherwise, yeah, it's just a good matchup for Tillman in general. He should be set up to have a nice game in this one. The toughest matchup is going to be against this Ugo Amadi guy, and like all the matchups against him are below average or poor, and that's going to be Jerry Jeudy primarily, and a little bit of Elijah Moore. Although let's see, as far as the Elijah Moore situation, look at these targets that he's gotten. He's gotten 9 targets, 12 targets, 7 targets with Jameis Winston. He's come alive basically with Jameis Winston. He's at 4,300, so he's another cheap guy. As far as the slot matchup with New Orleans, they're giving up 19.9 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers, so that's going to set him up really nicely. They've also been giving up 26.1 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So don't sleep on Chubb this week. If you want to go in a different direction from the passing game, Chubb will be a low-owned option here. And, he's slowly ramping up, 11 rushing attempts, 16 and 15. So, like Chubb has not done anything yet. That's going to keep him under the radar. And that's going to set up his ownership to be super low in a good matchup. And he's only 6K. So Chubb all around just has a good matchup. Kamara does not have a great matchup. The Browns are only giving up 19.5 DraftKings points a game to Kamara. But if you're looking for a run back, Kamara makes the most sense. He's going to be heavily involved in this game, whether or not it's a good matchup, just because of necessity. The other guys who are going to have the better matchups are going to be, the wideouts. But who are the wideouts? We got Marquez Valdes-Scantling as an option. He had a big week last week. You can see he had 28.9 DraftKings points, formed a really good connection, but that was off of 3 targets. So, maybe he gets more targets this week. Derek Carr, to his credit, he did help Rashid Shaheed become a legit receiver, because he was thought of last year as kind of a similar player as Valdes-Scantling, just one of these guys who runs those deep routes, and maybe you can get a long bomb to him every once in a while. But Rashid Shaheed this season has become a legit player. We got Tipton. Let's take a look at some of the snap counts for these guys. I think Tipton was out last week, but let's check that out. All right, so I'm going to sort it by team. Let's go to snap counts here. You always got to go to the snap counts when we got a team that's just been upended at a position, so you can get an idea of who's getting the most work. Looks like Tipton got 55% of the snaps last week. Jermaine Jackson got 2%. Dante Pettis, remember that guy? He got 13%. And Kevin Austin Jr. got 49% of the snaps last year. Let's take a look at that dude. All right. Hang on a second. I don't even see where's Valdes-Scantling on that list. Let me go back to this. That's the right week. Look at all these guys. I don't even see MVS on this list. Okay, they got him listed as multi. So he had 55% snap share last week. So that gave him plenty of opportunity. Now think of that type of game that he put up with a 55% snap share. Let's go back and take a look at this Kevin Austin Jr. guy. I've never heard of this dude, but let's see what kind of opportunity he had last week. He's at 3K. He had 2 targets last week. Caught them both for 36 yards. Looks like he might be back to the practice squad, though. Looks like he reverted back to the practice squad on Monday. Keep an eye to see if this dude is playing, but it might be Bub Means is back in, and maybe that's why he was out. Let's see what Bub Means' situation is. Well, he's been on injured reserve, so he's still got to be on injured reserve. I really don't know, like, with New Orleans right now. Maybe C.J. Wilson? Maybe he just came off of the injured list. I don't really know what to make of these Saints guys, but if you can get an idea of which of these guys is going to be, the primary pass catchers, the wide receivers that have faced Cleveland. Cleveland's given up 24.2 DraftKings points a game to the wide receiver position. This is the last 5 weeks. They've been giving up 14.9 DraftKings points a game over the last 5 weeks to the slot position. So the receivers on New Orleans, whoever they are going to be interesting. And I think Tipton was playing a lot of the slot. We get an idea of what PFF is saying about these dudes. Maybe they'll shed some light on it. Scantling, they got Jackson and they got Tipton. So, yeah, Tipton, might be interesting. He's out wide. Jackson is the projected slot receiver, and Valdez Scantling is the other wide out. So, not really sure what to make of Jackson either. Let's take a look at Jackson here. No targets, no receptions. Didn't do anything. Just something to read up on if you got other sources where you like to find sneaky plays. But, like, see if you can find out the best wideout for the Saints. It might even be Valdez Scantling at 4,400 again. Like, he's seems to have formed a decent connection with Derek Carr. So, like, if there's something there, don't be surprised to see Derek Carr be able to make this guy relevant, because he's done it in the past with other dudes. But, other than that, I kind of like the Jameis Winston double stack because I think all his receivers are going to be in play this week. And then on top of that, we got David Njoku, who I didn't even talk about yet. He's at 5,500. Njoku does not have the best matchup. It's 11.1 DraftKings points, but he's one of the best tight ends in the league, which is going to put him in play. The wideouts are only getting 14.9 DraftKings points a game from the Saints the last 5 weeks, but keep in mind that is Marshawn Lattimore. That is primarily the cause of that. And now that he is gone, it's open season for these receivers against the Saints. They just fired their head coach too. Don't forget about that. So, all right, so let's go into Baltimore-Pittsburgh. Lamar Jackson has a bit of a difficult matchup against Pittsburgh, but it's a divisional game. So you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt. Let's take a look at what Lamar Jackson has done in this matchup. Let's see. They got a new offensive coordinator for the Steelers, obviously, this year. But hang on a sec. For the Steelers, the new offensive coordinator, but the defensive mind is still there. I think Tomlin, primarily a defensive-oriented coach. All right, so Lamar Jackson, 236 yards and an interception in last year's game against them. He's been inactive for a lot of these games. And then the last one in 2021, 253 yards and a touchdown. He had 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. As far as his rushing yards, let's see, where's his rushing yards at? 45 rushing yards, 55 rushing yards. Hasn't scored a rushing touchdown against them. So, yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson has struggled against Pittsburgh. Obviously, with Derrick Henry there, it's a different looking offense this year. Arthur Smith, actually, he's on the Pittsburgh side. Yeah, so basically, yeah, the Ravens are. Lamar Jackson has struggled against his team, so that makes it interesting for Lamar Jackson if you're debating on starting him. He's at 8K. He's expensive on top of that. Russ Wilson gets a cushy matchup against the Baltimore defense. They're playing in Pittsburgh, by the way, too, and Pittsburgh are the dogs in this one. So Mike Tomlin loves to be in that situation where he's a home dog. Russell Wilson's only 5,900. Baltimore is susceptible deep. That's why you saw George Pickens in my picks for the underdog picks. I like him going over 90 receiving yards. I also have him going as one of my touchdown plays in another underdog video I'm going to be introducing this week. So I like George Pickens a lot this week at 7K. I think he's still reasonably priced. He had the 25-point game, the first game with Wilson, and then he had that 20-point game last week. So he's got a good matchup. He's formed a good chemistry with Russell Wilson. It seems like those two guys are made for each other. Wilson likes lobbing bombs, and Pickens is a contested catch guy. So those two guys are doing really well together. Deontay Johnson, they've been talking a lot of shit to Deontay Johnson, and he's 4,800. Don't be surprised to see that offense, try to stick it to him a little bit with Deontay Johnson at 4,800. He has been on the team for a few weeks, so you got to figure he's acclimated by now. He has not been involved yet. They've been primarily, obviously, focused on Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, but don't be surprised to see Deontay sneak in a good one against this matchup where the team was just been obliterating him. The Steelers had been obliterating him, so they might make it a point to give Deontay some opportunity this week, make him feel like part of the team. Let's see. The matchups are all good for Pittsburgh. Baltimore's giving up 14.3 DraftKings points a game to the tight end. They're giving up 16.6 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers. The big one, the George Pickens position, they're giving up 33.7 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position. And a lot of that has to do with Jamar Chase, his 2 games against them. And then we got the quarterback position, 22.6 DraftKings points a game is what they've been allowing to the quarterback position. The only good matchup really on the Baltimore side, they got a few middling matchups, but the wideouts on the Baltimore side have been getting 21.2 DraftKings points a game. So that's going to make Zay Flowers interesting. And let me get an idea of what kind of routes Deontay Johnson is running. I'm assuming he's a wideout, but maybe they've been putting him more in the slot. Zay Flowers is still running 38% of his routes from the slot, 36 on the right side of the field, and then 27 on the left. But his matchups are good to go. Zay Flowers looks really good this week. Rashad Bateman. Yeah, Deontay Johnson, they're probably going to be using him. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I wonder if Zay Flowers is going to be primarily running from the slot. Yeah, I guess PFF has him labeled as a slot receiver. Deontay is primarily on the outside, like at least he has been for most of the season with Carolina. He's only run 21% of his routes from the slot, and Bateman's only done 9% of his routes from the slot. So I don't think they're going to put Bateman in there. So I think Zay Flowers moves into the slot, and Deontay, takes an out wide. So, I mean, in that situation, like I said, like the wideout position is where Pittsburgh's been most vulnerable. That's going to set up Deontay Johnson to potentially have a good game. And I would keep, um, maybe a rule if you're doing stacks in this game. Um, maybe you want to do, one of those Baltimore receivers. I don't know if I'd put two Baltimore receivers in the same lineup. Those stacks never seem to really hit with Jackson, but Jackson is also in a difficult matchup himself. So don't be surprised to see one of those wideouts. If you're doing a Pittsburgh stack, I would probably put one of those wideouts as my run back. And as far as the running back, Derrick Henry with Pittsburgh, they're giving up 21.3 DraftKings points a game to running back position. So, Henry could make a good run back as well at 8,100. He hasn't done too well. He's had that 29-point game, but he had a couple weeks of 14 DraftKings points in there too. Just an absolute monster year for Derrick Henry. The running backs on the Pittsburgh side have a difficult matchup, though. Baltimore's been really good against the run, so that adds even more to that passing game of Pittsburgh. The only thing that's going to hurt them is if they keep trying to run it on early downs. Against a good run defense, it'd be like a stupid game plan. But we can't assume that Pittsburgh is going to get away from the run. But at the same time, if they do, then it's wide open for what we can see out of Pickens and Russ Wilson this week. So I like both those guys. Let's get an idea of Russell Wilson's ownership real quick. Get a DraftKings projections here. All right, so I'm seeing Russell Wilson at under 10%. So that's a good pivot off of Jameis Winston for us. Russell Wilson at 5,900. He's only a few $100s more than Jameis, and he's got the best matchup on the slate. He's got Pickens as a stacking partner. Pretty condensed offense since Russ has been the quarterback. It's basically been Pickens or bust. We've seen Freiermuth get involved. 3 targets, 2 targets, 3 targets, 3 targets, 3 targets, but he's gotten a touchdown last week. Not enough to get us in the winner's circle this week, though. 4,200 is too expensive. There's cheaper guys that have been playing better this year. As far as the defenses, Steelers D might be interesting. They're at 2,500. If we can't find a cheaper defense than that, then like Steelers D might be in play if Lamar Jackson struggles in this matchup. All right, so let's move on to the next game here. We got Minnesota versus Tennessee. Darnold turned back into the pumpkin, as I called a couple weeks ago. At least last week he did 9 DraftKings points. Versus Indy, he had 22. He had 18 versus the Rams and 17 versus Detroit. The Jets, he had 6. So I guess not too much of a pumpkin. I take that back. He's actually done pretty good. But last week he sucked against Jacksonville of all teams. So, Darnold definitely capable of putting up a bad game. He's against Tennessee, which is a tough pass defense. Tennessee has been good all around, basically. Just middling against the quarterback, running back, and the wide receivers and slot receivers. On the other side, Minnesota has been really good against the running back position, but they've been vulnerable against the wideouts and the slot receivers. One thing that I'm interested in with Tennessee is versus the tight end position, because look at how cheap Hawkinson still is. He's still at 4,700. He had 8 receptions off 9 targets last week, 15 DraftKings points. I had him in my Underdog video for over, I think it was like 3 receptions, and he blew that away. He got 8 receptions. So Hawkinson is interesting this week. Let's see who Tennessee has played as far as tight ends, because on paper, it's a bad matchup for Hawkinson. So let's take a look at who Tennessee has played this year. Let me get a look at the player who's played all throughout the season. All right, so Tennessee has played. They played the Chargers, who don't have a tight end. They played New England, who has Hunter Henry. They played Laporta over in Detroit. They played Kincaid over in Buffalo. Now, those guys have been just having down years in general. Indy, they didn't have any tight ends. They played Jonnu in Miami, who I don't think had come alive yet at that point. They played Kraft. They played Conklin, and they've played Komet. So, I mean, they played decent tight ends, but I still think that Hawkinson at 4,700 makes for an interesting play with the type of volume that he'll probably get no matter what. So keep that in mind with Hawkinson. Jefferson, always a threat. He's at 8,600, though, in a difficult matchup. If you see the low ownership on him, he might be a good pivot. Aaron Jones is going to have probably the best of the matchups on the Vikings side, with the Vikings being favorites in this one, but they're not playing at home. So, Jones might be interesting. He got hurt. He got carted off the field for an X-ray last week, and it looked like he was done for a few weeks, and then he came right back in the game. So, yeah, he's been tough this year. He's had 3 weeks in a row. It looks like 4 out of the last 5 weeks he's failed to get like a decent fantasy day. So, maybe we see something out of Jones this week. He's at 6,900 against Tennessee, a game that they should win. But Sam Darnold, like if Sam Darnold is struggling, that's going to set him up to be in rough shape against a Tennessee defense that's playing pretty well. Defenses in this game might be the best plays. I like the Vikings at 3,700. I don't mind the Titans either at 2,300, assuming that maybe Sam Darnold is going to become Sam Darnold again. All right, let's look at Indy versus the Jets. This is a good matchup on the Jets side. The Jets have all sorts of good matchups in this one, particularly Aaron Rodgers. They're giving up 18 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, and they're giving up 15.1 to the tight end position. So that's going to put Conklin in play. And they're giving up 22.9 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So Breece Hall is going to be in play. 19.2 to wideouts and 12.8 to slots. Those are both kind of middling. But, Indy in general has been a team to target for most offensive weapons. I think they've just been playing a little bit better the last few weeks. But the weapons that Rodgers has are both over 7K now. So it makes it a little bit tough to get those guys in. Breece Hall is at 7,500 on top of it. So all very expensive. Kind of difficult to pull the trigger on them. But at the same time, that might make them more interesting with the ownership. But, Aaron Rodgers just, he keeps dropping the ball in some of these easy matchups. Like last week against Arizona, he only scored 5 DraftKings points and they lost 31-6, just an embarrassing loss. He hasn't been bad this year. You see, he's got like 20 DraftKings points, 17 DraftKings points, 18 DraftKings points for a $5,500 salary. If you got, like in that 20 DraftKings point range, like you'd be happy with that performance for 5,500. But it's just a matter: is it going to be a Breece Hall game, or is it going to be a passing game? On the other side, Anthony Richardson returns this week. He's at 5,300, but he's against that difficult Jets defense. Jets are at 2,800. That's super cheap going against Anthony Richardson, who's been struggling. Anthony Richardson's going to be trying to get his confidence back up after being benched for Flacco, but we could end up seeing Richardson benched in this one. And that's why I have him at higher than 0.5 interceptions on my underdog pick. Jonathan Taylor, the Jets have been weaker against the run. That's really the only weak spot of their defense this year. So Jonathan Taylor will be in play too, depending on what kind of game script you're writing. But he's at 7,600. So all these guys are expensive, and no one really stands out as having like the best matchup in the game. And I think there's other places that we can go, honestly. So Atlanta versus Denver. Take a look at this matchup. Atlanta is giving up 18.7 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, and that is going to put Bo Nix in play again. He's at 6,200 now, though. He's getting super pricey, but he's shown some upside. He's had that 29 DraftKings point week. He's got a nice matchup in this one against Atlanta. Atlanta's a team that can put up points on top of that. Even though Denver has got a tough defense, Denver has been most susceptible to the running back position. So that is going to put Bijan Robinson in play. Bijan Robinson is at 7,800. He's getting pricey, but he's been on fire the last 5 weeks. 25 plus DraftKings points, 26, 23, 21, and 32. So he's crossed 20 DraftKings points in all of the last 5 weeks. After a slow start to the season, seems like Bijan Robinson is coming around for sure. I like him at 7,800 even in this matchup. Gives us a run back if you want to use Bo Nix too. I would stack Bo Nix with Sutton. Sutton's still cheap. Sutton might be the best play in this game at 5,900. Atlanta's been giving up 24 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. Now, when we get into the Kansas City game, I talked about it a little bit with Amari Cooper. Last week, Sutton was the guy who was facing off against that cornerback I was talking about earlier in the underdog section. Look at what he did. He did 26 DraftKings points against 19 DraftKings points against that tough Kansas City defense. So, he had a decent game against them, and now it's going to be Amari Cooper potentially in that situation with Josh Allen throwing it to him instead of Bo Nix. So, if Amari Cooper is good to go this week, he's going to be in a good spot. But Sutton finds himself in another good spot this week. He's still only 5,900. I like Sutton a lot this week, and Atlanta is giving up 24 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position. They're also vulnerable against the tight end position. So if you want to do the Pitts thing, 9 DraftKings points and 2 DraftKings points in the past 2 weeks. You had that one little stretch where you had that 25 DraftKings point week that gave people hope, but then he reverted back into Kyle Pitts. But he has a decent matchup in this one. So, you can potentially use him as a tight end this week at 4,800. He's cheap. He's only $100 more than Hawkinson, who I like because of the price. Other than that, Darnell Mooney's been really good this year. Let me see if there's anything that stands out in Darnell Mooney's matchup real quick. See if we can find a nugget on him. Yeah, now Denver Denver's pass defense is probably a little bit better than the spreadsheet is talking about with Stingley, obviously, and Drake London has been running a lot of his routes in the slot. He's got about 39% of his routes in the slot. So he will be avoiding the outside more. Darnell Mooney might see Stingley more this week. Drake London, that would make him a little bit interesting, but Denver's still only giving up 11 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers. I think it's Bijan for Atlanta for me, and then I like a few guys on the Denver side. I wouldn't mind a Bo Nix to Cortland Sutton and running it back with Bijan Robinson. Considering those guys, let's see what Sutton's ownership is. He's at 15%, so it's not horrible. Nix is under 10%, so he's not horrible. And Bijan should be chalky. No, he's only at 12%, probably because the price is creeping up there. So I don't hate the stack in this one. We know both teams can put up offense. San Francisco versus Seattle. Divisional game. Two teams very familiar with each other. Geno Smith has a rough history against San Francisco. He's never thrown multiple touchdowns against them. And San Francisco has just basically owned him. I can't remember what the game was, if it was this year or last year. Have they played San Francisco or Seattle? Yeah. This year, played it a similar way. San Francisco ended up winning 36-24 in that game. But, I was avoiding the pass catchers on the Seattle side primarily. But if we're looking at the matchups, none of the pass catchers really have a decent matchup. The only one who has a decent matchup is going to be Kenneth Walker. Because San Francisco giving up 23.5 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. Let me see if I can find anything on Jackson Smith and Jigba. Because with DK Metcalf coming back this week, that's going to take some of the attention off of Smith and Jigba. Let's see if we can find a nugget on him. So he's playing 81% of his snaps in the slot. According to Rich Rebar, San Francisco has allowed a league-high 10.6 yards per target to slot receivers. So keep that in mind with Smith and Jigba. If you're looking for a run back, if you're doing a stack on the San Francisco side, let's get an idea of Smith and Jigba's ownership. Smith and Jigba is looking at a sub 2% ownership this week. So, and this is a guy who just had a monster game. Smith and Jigba had 40 DraftKings points the last time he played in Week 9 versus the Rams. Finds himself in a matchup against the team that's given up the most yardage to slot receivers. So Smith and Jigba could be interesting as a run back this week. He's at 6,500, so he's not getting any cheaper. I like the San Francisco side too. Debo, he's kind of disappointed the last few weeks. Let's see what's done to his ownership. His ownership is now around 10%. So Debo, finds himself in a decent spot. Seattle's given up 25 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. That's going to be good for Debo. It's going to be good for Jennings, especially. Jennings, as I predicted last week, came back and took over his role as the Brandon Ayuk substitute. He had 16 DraftKings points off 11 targets last week. I would not be surprised to see Jennings have a decent week, and he's only 5,300. He's a guy who's been reliable for these 49ers every time they've needed him. He earned the third and Juwan nickname because he's their go-to guy. And he finally has an opportunity with Ayuk on injured reserve with his ACL tear. Pearsall had a decent game last week as well. He's not going to get as much run as Jennings, but he ended up with 6 targets last week. But you got to figure like Jennings' first week back, and he took that role right back over. So let's look at the snap shares for San Francisco here. Debo had 78%. Juwan Jennings, 91% snap shares. Pearsall had 64%. So 91% for Jennings. So let's see what Jennings' ownership is. He's going to be a little bit chalky at 21%. So, he's a little bit chalky. So maybe Debo would be the pivot. But Jennings, I don't hate him this week in this matchup. The run back, I think, is going to be Kenneth Walker or Jackson Smith and Jigba. Christian McCaffrey also has a good matchup. The way that Seattle's been giving up 24 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, so that's going to set up McCaffrey for a nice game. So, like a Purdy stat could be Purdy, McCaffrey, and Jennings or something like that. I wouldn't hate going in that direction, and then you run it back, with Smith and Jigba or something like that, maybe. But plenty of options there. Kansas City versus Buffalo. Now, this is a game that I thought that it would be like an easy fade with both the defenses playing pretty well and both the offenses, kind of lacking weapons for the most part. But all the weaknesses of these defenses are where the strengths of the offenses are. Buffalo is weak against the slot receiver. They're giving up 13.3 DraftKings points a game to slots, and that's where DeAndre Hopkins is running most of his routes. We got the running back position. Buffalo's giving up 27.7 DraftKings points a game to running backs, and Kareem Hunt has been doing well. On the Buffalo side, the Kansas City Chiefs are giving up 15.4 DraftKings points a game to the slot, and that's where Khalil Shakir is running most of his routes. And they're giving up 16.4 DraftKings points a game to tight ends, and that could see us get a value play in Dawson Knox in. Dawson Knox, he's the type of guy that if he is too high owned, then, not really worth it. He's at 3,500. Now let's check out 3,500 and see what Knox's ownership is. 16%. So he's going to be highly owned. Now, this is where the Amari Cooper situation comes in because he's facing off against that weak corner for Kansas City, which is going to set up Amari Cooper to have a decent game. He was limited in Friday's practice. So we got to keep an eye out for his status. I would imagine that he plays, but make sure that you have a backup plan if you got Cooper in your lineup. But this is a game shaping up to, on paper, it looks like a bad matchup, but all the good weapons for the most part have good matchups in this one. So, this is one where, we can do a preliminary stack here. This is one where if we want to do like Josh Allen to Amari Cooper, and if we wanted to add in Shakir and run it back with Hopkins, It's going to leave us with 4,900. I haven't even got my running backs in there. Audric Estime, I forgot to cover him in the Broncos section, but now in the showdowns that I've covered the Broncos, Sean Payton has been talking up getting the rookies more run, and he specifically mentioned Audric Estime several times. It's taken a few weeks for him to come around and get his opportunity, but Audric Estime got his opportunity last week against the Chiefs. 14 attempts, 53 yards. He is going to be under 10% owned this week. He's a $4,500 running back. And Denver going up against Atlanta. Atlanta's giving up 21 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. We need value. I'm going to plug in Estime as my value guy. Looking at the defenses, like I was talking about earlier in the show, we're probably going to want to have a cheap defense. Well, that's basically every week. But the Titans against Minnesota is in play at 2,300. Chicago's in play against Green Bay. Cleveland is in play against New Orleans. We could even go there and put Chubb in as our second running back. Not the best running back situation, but we're stacking this game. That's what we're concerned with. Let's get Hunt in there. Talked about his good matchup. That's going to leave us 4,700 for our tight end. And look at who our options are. We got Hawkinson. We got Andrews. We got Hill. So we got some options there. Another guy that I like, obviously, is Pickens. So let's say I want to take out here. Let's put Shakir back in there. Let's take out Cooper. Now let's take out Chubb. Let's put Hunt back in there. Let's put Pickens and see where that leaves us. 3,700 still leaves us in a good spot for a tight end. Gives us options like Knox, who I just talked about. That give us like Allen with like a triple stack. So I don't know necessarily that I want to do that. Although it's against Kansas City, so Hooper, Troutman. All right, so now let's go value here. Davis is an option. The tight end on the Rams. He ended up getting 6 targets last week, 5 receptions with those 6 targets. They never use tight ends, so this is like a horrible thin play, but he's at 2,500. And New England's given up 10.9 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. If we don't want to do that, Knox is probably just the best play down here. I don't really see anyone else that I would like too much down here. If we wanted to, we got Chubb out of there, so let's take the Browns out. We're not locked in with them. If we wanted to put Tennessee in there, leaves us with 4K for a tight end. That gives us like Hunter Henry as an option, Jonnu Smith. I like that a lot better. I'd probably roll with Henry there, but that gives us Allen, Cooper, and Shakir running it back with Hopkins and Hunt. If that game shoots out, like all the weaknesses against all the strengths, that puts us in a pretty good spot. And then we got Pickens as a one-off. We got Estime as a one-off. And we got the Tennessee defense as a one-off. So that's an interesting way to go if you wanted to go that direction. Let's put Henry in there. Let's take Pickens out, see what other options we'd have. Garrett Wilson, Kenneth Walker, Zay Flowers, a few of the guys that we spoke about. Deebo Samuel, a lot of good options there. So I think that's a good solid way to go. Let's clear that out. Let's go in a different direction. Let's go with the Winston stack I was talking about. So let's get Jameis in there. Let's throw in, I liked Moore, Elijah Moore, and I liked Tillman. If we want to run it back, let's run it back with Taysom. Give us a cheap option there too. Let's make it just a completely cheap stack. None of those guys are over 5,300 or 5,500. Let's go with our defense. Let's go down to let's go back to the Browns. So now this is a value stack. So let's get a expensive guy in here. Let's get McCaffrey. McCaffrey showed no signs of, lingering issues. Let's see what we can do with Estime in there. And I like Pickens. Leaves us with 8K in the flex. At that point, we got Bijan, we got Kyron, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall. A lot of good studs there. Cup, Hill. A lot of good options there. If we wanted to go Bijan, we could swap Hill out for Hawkinson. Now let's see if we want to get exposure to that Kansas City game on top of this. I think Hunt is the way to go with that. At least part of the way to go. If we put Hunt in there, at least this with 5,800 in the flex. Let's see who we can get from that Kansas City game as a run back in that situation. Mari Cooper. So we'd have Cooper or we'd have Hopkins, just go double up on the Chiefs side. Shakir's a little out of our price range. We could put Shakir in there, though. Get rid of our New Orleans run back. Go with Knox. Let's see. If Winston's going to be thrown, we're going to want to have – it might be better to go with for the build. If you wanted the correlation, you could swap out of you could swap into Kamara. You swap Kamara in there. He'd be your run back with Winston, Moore, and Tillman. That leaves us with 4,100 for our tight end position. You can see we still have our Hunt, Shakir stack in that Buffalo game. If we wanted to, we could put Knox in as our tight end. So it still leaves us in pretty good shape to have a well-correlated lineup. That makes a lot of sense. Oh, we'd have to get the Browns out of here. So that way we could go back down to the Titans. And if we wanted to, do something here, Well, we'd have 4,400 for tight end. Next guy I like is Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. They're both 3,900 range. That would leave us with 500 if I went with, let's say we go with Hunter Henry. 2,800 for a defense. You puts us at the Jets. I mean, that'd be perfect. So, that's a couple directions that we can go for our lineups this week. Make sure to hit that like button. 30 likes will trigger the short video later on. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. You're going to want to subscribe. God, I put that stupid other screen up the whole time. Here's how this lineup looked. Winston, Kamara, Hunt, Moore, Tillman, Pickens, Henry, and Shakir. There were a few other options there. You can hear the audio on the other one. Let me go back into that Chiefs build. We're going Allen, Shakir. Yeah. So sorry guys, I got a phone call. I got to go. Just make sure to listen to that audio, and you'll be able to make out that lineup. But good luck, guys. Hit the subscribe and hit the like button, and I will see you later on.